Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Dorman YouTube channel. I'm going to do a wrap-up or recap of UFC 280 kind of with a broad brush stroke after I cover a couple of pertinent issues to myself personally, maybe my circle, and give you some updates on what to expect going forward. This isn't going to be like video evidence type breakdown. It's just kind of my thoughts. Just my thoughts, man. Just my thoughts. So, fights that were noteworthy or that I had maybe spoken to prior to the event, how they went, and my opinions on how they went, and perhaps what's in the future for said fight and or fighters. So before I start, I do want to say, and hopefully AJ, for example, would be someone that could comment, and I'm not gonna text him to comment, but if he hears this, he can. I was weirded out. I mean, I've been saying Islam's the next champ, I think, before Khabib even won it, kind of thing, but it's been years and years that I've called this out, and it's not the first time. It was the same with Khabib. We're going back 10 years of me essentially calling just about every champion 3 or 4 fights out of that said title fight. So it's not because I buy UFC magazine and listen to the articles by people paid by the organization. And when I really realized that there was kind of this organizational slant on things, and I know some of you are just super blue-pilled, Oswald acted alone types, that's okay. Someday you'll pick up a book and, read Jacob Rubenstein's diary and learn about life and the world. But not everyone out there that smiles is your friend, and not everyone mean to you is your enemy. I'm certainly not your enemy, but I'm not here to make friends. That's never been my objective. So with that caveat out of the way, I noticed leading up to this fight, this goes back to the AJ part, and hopefully he'll comment, is that I found it dumbfounding or just extraordinary that on everything that was pro fighters pick, or coaches and executives, and no one would use that as clickbait, but pick a winner on Islam versus Charles, and it was 90-10, it was 108-7 Charles over Islam. And I'm thinking in my head that while at the moment I'm not coaching anyone at that level, of course I'm always open to with a phone call. I should be, because how almost 100% of professional fighters and coaches could be so misled by ESPN interviews and what Jim said and what Jane said about Islam's perseverance. And now he's a dad. Now his baby making led to a creation, so he is in fact a totally different human, an alien species hybrid that's going to destroy Islam Makhachev. It just takes these extraordinary leaps of imagination of people that's job is to look at technique and then assess a situation, is always what I try to do. It wasn't easy for me to pick Khabib. It became easier as time went on and Conor fucked up. It became easier for me to root for Khabib and or see things more clearly. And this has happened before, going all the way back. Don't forget, I've been around from the beginning. So, sometimes your emotion can get in the way of who you think won, and that'll come up a little bit later on one of the co-mains, or on the main card anyway. But I find it astounding how many people got this one wrong, when to me, and someone I cite often only because we're from the same schools. We were taught by a lot of the same people, and I think we think alike, and we happen to get along, although I don't even know if he can say it publicly anymore, and for us. But I did leave him a nice comment on his assessment video, because I feel like it's a right side of history kind of thing more than anything else. You can't pick with who you relate to more and who you're just plain old rooting for in a position like ours. You have to usually gain credibility by having some kind of wherewithal and knowledge of the sport, where you can look at them, as I often say, as silhouettes. You got to look at two fighters as silhouettes, their styles, how you see that playing out, and it's based on history, what you yourself may know about technique or your own technical acumen, how much experience you may or may not have. And I think with Faraz, clearly in the experience realm, is he's king as far as people that analyze it all. And then, there's a lot of people who are good writers. There's a lot of people who have a smooth talking voice. But this obsession with Oliveira got a little goofy, and I've been hinting at it subtly for a while now. Like, you're gonna be let down. The original line seemed good to me, and if you even read my comment section, I wasn't trying to be slippery. I just wasn't looking to argue about it until after the fight, and I'm still not. I wanted to come on here and say, I fucking told you so for the 80th time in a row. When are people gonna wake up? But that's coming from a place of, like, when am I gonna catch a break in this game? So anyway, I'll stop whining, because I know it's gonna sound like that. But how long do I have to be right before someone notices? Not only right, but I mean, I covered the techniques that were essential to Islam winning in the preview video. I know it was like 12 minutes long, but what I really focused on, the cross-side arm triangle, I knew would be there because I've seen Charles and guard enough. I knew that he'd have to use that right hook in order to corral. He ended up doing it a little bit differently, but he did it in the way that I described prior in the fight, in the clinch, the way that I decided. That was Red on the Luke Thomas show, who pretended that I was just some guy. He knows better. He knows who I am. Ask him. He knows who I am. Every analyst in this game knows who I am. Most fighters do as well. So, without further ado, I'll put a little disclaimer, fast forward to around the 7-minute mark. When I start just talking about the fights, I'm just on UFC.com looking at what I find pertinent. I'll try to keep this like about a half hour long, or less, if possible, but I know I rant like I just did. Okay, so, first fight of note, as far as people that I've either broken down or said to take note of, Muhammad Makayev, out of the UK, but, from Dagestan, at least born. He's got a really good grappling pedigree, and his striking is exciting for sure. Allegedly, he was sick leading up to the fight. That's always a tough call as far as from where I sit. I don't know. I don't know the man. Very young, very high ceiling. If he listens to this and I had any advice for Makayev, it'd be just to be a little less cowboy. We saw him land a really nice flying knee into I believe it was a ninja choke kind of finish when someone tried to slam him. He's got all the talent in the world, but that cowboy-itis we've seen from Hamzat too is it's dangerous. And this fight was a lot closer than I thought it would be, taking nothing away from Malcolm Gordon, who's very tough and a worthy opponent nevertheless. I thought the Petrosian-Dobson fight was a good fight for sure, back and forth. I thought that my man Volkan was pretty close with Nikita Krylov, but I feel that Volkan, the one thing I wanted to do with him when I did work with him that I just was unable to, was to work on him being a little more light. And he's heavy-handed because he's not, in a way, but he's also got these giant mitts and, just thick, dense bone structure to be powerful. But sometimes he gets himself in trouble by his movement backward and his kind of plodding nature, where if something stops landing offensively, he'll either stop throwing it or stick to a lesser version of it. So Krylov ends up getting the decision there in a good fight. You had that Uzbekistan Makhmud Muradov fight, and he lost to Chao Barayo. I could be butchering that name. I don't know exactly how it's pronounced because I often mute. And that was an interesting yet, kind of a paced fight, we'll call it, a decision. Now, on to people that surprised me consistently. Bilal Muhammad against, someone that was spoken up almost to the Hamzat level, and Sean Brady. Bilal with basically a knockout. They're putting it as KO/TKO, but in the second round, Muhammad I don't know who saw the interviews with him leading up to and or prior to the fight. Maybe post-fight he might have mentioned it as well. But he's been training with the Eagles MMA guys and obviously Coach Hav. And he said it was like the toughest yet most introspective or maybe effective camp he's ever been in via that hard work, and boy did it pay off. He's just one of those guys that has been in, like, I'd say in his last 6 fights, I probably picked him once, and he just keeps winning and proving me wrong. So that would fall in the category of, I'm not sitting here saying on a pedestal saying that I'm always right. I'm just saying that at the highest level, I think I'm seeing things that others maybe aren't or aren't admitting they see. It's one or the other. I can't find a third option. It's astounding to me the rate at which people tend to agree at that level. So there was Caitlin Chukagian. The fight was really boring. Beneil Dariush's part 2 of the Jesus, these guys just constantly surprise me. Dariush beating a really tough and really interesting kind of turbo engine of a fighter in Gamrot, who I thought was kind of in that line to start climbing the ranks at lightweight. And Dariush is this pit stop, and they're not gatekeepers in that kind of traditional negative connotation sense. But him and people like Bilal Muhammad, they're just these grinders, these workers, these kind of blue collar with really solid technical acumen type fighters, and they just again and again go out, win, go home, and you just kind of sit here and hope they get a chance at some glory. I don't think anyone at 155 currently has much of a chance with Islam, but we'll get there. So I'm gonna try to stay hasty. Let's move up to the next one. Aljamain TJ, I have mixed feelings on. Part of me understands TJ's, almost my age, and due to, his obvious EPO thing and who knows what else behind the scenes, because people have this disdain for TJ. I don't have it, because I don't think he was the only one. I think he's one of the only honest ones. And, but if I had a critique on this fight, it would be like, you can't... That was a big time, and I know he apologized, and some respect there, but you can't. 135 is so loaded. So when I see these younger 135ers, specifically like an Umar Nurmagomedov, like, when are they going to get into that 15, 10? You're taking chances away, not so much from the top fivers, but from the guys at like 9 and 13, because they've got to start, fighting the 7s and 8s of the world, or whatever it is, in order to move up. So, I have mixed feelings on TJ taking the fight in the first place. I mean, this has been a long time in the make, and I just feel like there were other fights to make. Now, it looks like, I don't know what TJ is going to really do. That might have been his last fight. Maybe he'll come back for another 1 or 2. I can't say I blame the man either way. Aljo, still champ. I don't know what's next. They're talking about Cejudo potentially there. I don't mind that. I think stylistically it's a fun fight. Now let's get to the 2 more controversial fights to wrap this up, and I'll tell you what I plan on doing next and when, because I've been, I went to New Jersey for the weekend. I wanted to record some things down there, but it just didn't play out that way, and I've been busy, so it is what it is. I'm a one-man show here. Give me a break, right? Or don't. It doesn't matter. Just take what you can get. It's free, right? Sean O'Malley versus Piotr Jan. That fight, I don't know that I was rooting. I do like Sean O'Malley because he's always, well, he used to anyway. He used to like comment on my breakdowns. I mean, he is a fight student. He's a student of the fight game, and I haven't heard from him in years. But there was, he used to comment like on my first breakdown of him. So of course I'm always gonna have a little special place for all those people to this day. And I thought it was maybe a little over his head, but I could see, due to the striking tendencies of Jan, despite having pretty good grappling but loving the firefight, that Sean had he was a live dog, and he won it. controversially, and a lot of people kind of rushed to my channel to say robbery, and he had no business. When I first watched it, I have to be honest, I thought Sean won, but there's chaos, and this is kind of the reason I like to watch fights either alone or quietly, mostly, is that sometimes, it could just be turning my head at the wrong moment or having to use the men's room or whatever the case. You might miss an important part of a fight, or not, or you just didn't assess it properly. But upon rewatching it, what I'm really finding from people is that it was like who you wanted to win won. So if you came in rooting for O'Malley, then O'Malley won. If you came in rooting for Jan, you seem to think Jan won. If you were really impartial, then it kind of splits up a little bit. But I think the way we should all look at this, Sean included, or his management included, or the UFC included, is that this was a win-win for Sean. If he had lost the decision, it's almost as though he gained as much, because he didn't win decisively enough, I don't think, to merit said title fight against Aljamain. And I think Sean, unfortunately, is going to find out the way that Habib did, and so many others have, that some of which I know personally get promised title fights, and the deck of cards gets reshuffled, and it's it wasn't written in stone, so no one's really going to be no one's beholden to said contract. And I'll make up words if I want, because that's how I roll. So I think win-win for Sean. I don't think it was a robbery. I think it was a very close fight, but if you have to look at it, Jan won the significant strikes battle, and he had the control time in like 6 takedowns, or 5 takedowns maybe. I don't know why they count so much, but they do count. And I didn't write the rules, but I gotta kind of, at least look at them and assess them. And when I'm doing just recaps like this, I've got to keep them in mind for sure, right? I mean, that's a duh. So I think win-win for O'Malley in a win, but I do think in a loss it wouldn't have hurt him all that much the way the fight panned out. If in the first round he got slept, well, obviously that's just a lose. I think this was more of a win-win, and I think by winning he certainly is going to get a top 3 type no matter what. We'll see. I'd like to see. A lot of people are saying him in Sandhagen. I'm surprised that hasn't happened yet. I think that's a fascinating fight. I think the grappling will nullify itself, maybe. And it would just be what a fun, striking affair that would be. O'Malley's got a little more fast, twitchy, what I call, like, skinny power, like Tommy Hearn's power. And I don't mean that with any negative connotation. I'm a Hitman fan unless he's fighting Hagler. So, interesting fight, nevertheless. Sean certainly proved that he belongs. He is a fascinating striker with great reach and great power, and he's super creative. I mean, what's not to like if you're a striking fan? And finally, before I get into just an overview, I am going to break down this fight with video example. But usually with big fights like this, there's always this pay-per-view hunting going on from like YouTube, well, via the UFC, but just taking down videos. And I've been in good withstanding for a while now. Obviously no one's promoting me, but as far as like I haven't been caught, like no one's hit me with a strike or anything in a while, so that's a good thing, and I want to avoid that, just in case somehow they flip the switch to on, or the faucet back on with me. In the main event, despite the world picking the underdog, Charles Oliveira, I called my friends that gamble, some of them high stakes gamblers. Just look at my Twitter to see whom I may be speaking about. That follow my channel, I think, for this, maybe just for that alone, to make more educated picks or better educated picks. I never backed off of Islam winning this fight. I said Charles had the best chance on the feet because but without saying it, I mean, I might have said it in comment sections. I don't know how strongly, but I just didn't see him having any prayer in grappling exchanges. And despite Luke Thomas kind of briefing over my name, I got brought up on his show, and it was like, awesome guy. It's like, Luke, you know who I am. Just give me a hat tip, if you will. Islam did exactly what I said he'd do. exactly what did I know he'd be exactly that dominant? No. I'm not psychic. I see patterns well. That's why you're tuning in, right? This Dagestani, it doesn't matter, Sambo, Jiu-Jitsu, wrestling, all of that's kind of moot. What they've developed via Dorman is a mixed martial arts grappling system that is based around, will strikes work here for you offensively? Can you be hit here from a defensive standpoint? So everything is with strikes in mind, with the cage in mind. It is very tailored to the UFC, specifically to the UFC, especially with cage grappling. And I feel like Islam's kind of miles ahead because there's entries, right? That's part of grappling. So entries into the clinch, which I covered, I feel like pretty thoroughly. There's the actual takedown itself, or trip, or whatever you want to call it, and then what do you do when you get there? And I feel like Islam can create more through grappling exchanges than Charles just via his grappling. Charles' grappling exchanges that become these kind of timeless submissions. I mean, he's certainly proven himself there. I think he's all-time number one in submissions in the UFC. It's impressive. It's just that it's usually damage caused, and then a really, again, I'll use the word like I did with Mikhaev, a cowboy approach to the finish against someone as methodical and surprisingly calm for the fight in Islam. That cowboyitis is going to get you in trouble, and that's why when SHTF, as they say, TF, when shit hits the fan, look for a guy that's calm but paying attention. If you're in public, they're usually assessing the situation because they're comfortable. Islam looked very comfortable. Now, could that have been Abu Dhabi? Sure, there's an argument for that, but I just think he was ready. And I think sometimes the really strong faith of these guys comes into play. And it's not something that I can make a claim for myself, but I respect it for sure, and I respect Islam, and what a win. I mean, he won the striking exchanges, certainly won the grappling exchanges, and he won via the choke I told you he would. I mean, how much more accurate do I need to be before I put out videos that get 500 views only and just sit there stagnant, where the thumbs up keep going up and the views don't? I mean, I don't know what I have to do to change that from happening, or what I've said in the past that is making that happen, but I can't control it. There's no way to control it. I've tried to put out 5 videos a week to change things. It doesn't. I do better when I put out videos once a month, to be honest. I don't want to do that because I have fans and patrons, and speaking of them, I have to get back to a lot of you. I still owe you that, but it's going to be a project, so it's just when I get to it. So the 2 things on the horizon you can look forward to for sure. Obviously, there's a Calvin fight coming up, and I always like to break him down because he's one of the homies from where I'm from, but I'll wait to see how that fight plays out with Arnold Allen. That's a great fight, by the way. I'm going to do a thorough kind of, not frame by frame, but at least the high and low points of Islam versus Charles and what I think the future should hold for him. I don't like the Volkanovski fight yet. I love the idea of it. Your first title defense to be a unification champ type, it's just, Alex has nothing to lose, and Islam has everything to lose, and I don't tend to like those situations, especially when I respect both fighters. I gotta look at it just honestly. I've always had a good back and forth. I mean, it's all via the internet with both of them, more through Islam's people, whereas I've spoken to Alex a little bit, and even some of his family members. They're all really cool, and I respect both. I just think you wait a little on that fight. The problem is, who does Volk fight, right? But I think Islam Dariush makes sense. I don't know if the other guys do necessarily, only because their losses to Charles and how recent they were, the top 5-ish guys. But I think Dariush makes a lot of sense, and then maybe you do Volkanovski. I know it doesn't really work out as far as, I believe it's in Perth, whatever show's coming up next, but some things to look forward to. But I really wanted to just do a voiceover. I'm just going to put up like a picture of someone punching somebody and let this play out as kind of a update / where I'm at with things, kind of just have the content out there, and you can get my take in a broad kind of sense, a broad brush stroke. Islam champion, I told you 5 years ago, at least, if you've been following. And I'll continue this. This isn't, I just give you my best assessment, and I always say minus a banana peel or something to that effect, meaning minus something weird, right? Matt Serra GSP won, and I love Matt Serra. And in fact, I know Matt Serra better than I know George. But that was a banana peel, right? In the second fight, we saw that. That's why there was kind of like, well, we don't really need a third one. BJ Penn won, even though George won that, just to use the same person. In the second fight, George was so dominant, it was like, well, we're not going to do this again, right? So those are banana peel type fights. So minus scenarios like that, I didn't see a way for Charles to win. I saw it, and I have plenty of people that may or may not comment about this, but knew how I felt about this. I was, especially privately, I was a little more candid. And God bless him and his team and what Habib has done in the absence of the late great, his father, Abdulmanap. I mean, what a incredible system of combat that he's created in Dagestan, where they just have brilliant coaches and brilliant game plans, and it was executed flawlessly. And I'm really, really proud of what they've put together over there and how they've acclimated into American culture as well, which isn't an easy thing to do, especially as a Russian. So with all of that said, what a fight card. I love that the main card minus 1 or 2 was pretty strong, and let's hope things keep going in this direction where it's not all hype. It's it's going to be some of that. Of course, it's entertainment, but there's some purity still in the sport, and parity for that matter, with an ARITY, not RODY. Those would be great. So anyway, these are updates. People that have I've got a few new patrons I gotta get in touch with. I'll get back to you within the week, and I will try to have a thorough breakdown of Charles and Islam, and maybe some I gotta do a boxing breakdown soon too. I'm due. So those are things to expect, say, within the next week, hopefully. But I'm having some things in my personal life that are just really slowing me down. And honestly, if I made the money I used to make on here, I'd be fine, but it just isn't the case anymore. So, not to sound like I'm begging for anything, I just want to create content, and hopefully someone sees that little tip jar and feels generous, right? That'd be nice. Anyway, I love you all. Thank you for tuning in, and hopefully we will re-engage soon. I'll have a much more detailed and thorough analysis of the Islam versus Charles title fight, in which I can kind of teach more so than talk. Okay? Alright, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Cheers.